at Temple Small Business Development Center. Here at Temple Small Business Development Center, we help businesses start and grow. We provide free one-on-one counseling services and a variety of low to no cost webinars. Today, you have joined us for our website planning series, Website Technology You Should Know About webinar. A copy of today's PowerPoint, along with other materials, such as the recording links, will be shared with all the attendees 3 to 5 business days after the event. Keep in mind, all the attendees have been muted. We do, however, encourage you to post any questions that you have in the Q&A. If you want to make a comment about just something you see on the slides or something that Ms. Jane Clark has for you today, go ahead and post that information in the chat. And yeah, I guess at this point, I will go ahead and turn the floor over to Jane Clark. Jane, take it away.
Hi, good morning, everyone, or afternoon, I guess, officially. I'm Jane Clark, and today we're going to be learning about website technology that you should know. So this is exciting. I've been designing websites since the 90s, and there's a lot more technology now, so it's not the same thing. Not the same thing at all. So I'm Jane Clark. I'm a multidisciplined graphic designer. I have a specialty of front-end web development, which is sort of how I launched my career. And I specialize in web design and SEO. Again, I've been designing websites since the 90s. A lot has changed since then. I've won some awards, got some experience, and for Harry Potter fans out there, I am a Ravenclaw. Just a little tidbit there. So a little bit about me and what I do. Well, I'm the co-founder and creative director of Brand Swan, and we help small businesses, nonprofits, and professionals break away from the flock through story-driven branding, web design, and marketing. So web design is a huge part of what we do, especially because, well, especially since COVID-19, people are interacting more, and websites just aren't an information place to land. They are digital environments for people to experience when your company. So that's sort of how we take a look at websites these days. So let's talk about the basics. I'm sure that lots of you might be more savvy than others, so I'm going to start off with the basics, and I have a good analogy for you and how all of this sort of ties together. So what makes up a website? There are two things. The first is your domain, and the second is your hosting account. And your domain name is comprised of three different things. One is your domain name, of course. Where I'm going to use brandswan.com as an example throughout this presentation. Then you have your domain registrar, and your domain registrar is who you go to buy your domain. Now, when you buy a domain, you aren't owning it per se. You kind of lease it for life. It's never really yours unless, I guess, you prepay for 1,000 years or so, whatever lifetime warranties are these days. So if you let it lapse, some people will actually buy it out from under you and try to resell it to you for thousands of dollars. So try not to let that lapse. Thirdly, you have your domain control. And this is where, think of it like an airport control, where they're telling all the planes where to land and if they're clear and all that stuff. So your domain registrar and your domain controls do not have to be at the same place. Then you have your hosting account, and this is where your website lives in the world. Now, your domain, hosting, and email can be at three separate places. To give you a simpler analogy, think of your domain name as a card catalog in a library. And it tells you where the book is on what shelf. And as a book, you share a shelf with other books. And the shelf is your hosting account. And a lot of the hosting accounts available today are what we call shared hosting. So that's why you tend to have more than one website on a single server. So that's how I look at it. The domain tells you where everything is located, and the shelf is the hosting account. So some of you might already have a domain and a website, and you're not sure where it is. Perhaps you've lost your login information and you're kind of panicking. Well, there's a tool that can kind of get you started. So if you were to click on Whois, this is a website, you can enter your domain name, search for it, and it will give you all the information about that domain name. Now, where I'm at, I have something called domain privacy, which I'll go into. So the information that's going to appear here is Google's information. If I did not have privacy, my information would be listed here publicly. So do keep that in mind. When you register a domain name, people can see your information. Why does that matter? Well, sometimes people will scan these type of domains and maybe send you a letter in the mail that says, hey, renew your domain name. But really, you're moving your domain to another company and probably paying a lot more for it. So be aware of those type of scams. And sometimes people just get you on email lists, and it's annoying, but it's not the end of the world. So just be aware of where your domain is located. And if you aren't sure, this can really help you. The name servers is also a giveaway as to where you are. Because my name servers are Google, you can rest assured that's probably where my site is hosted. So yes, these are the name servers. And again, the name servers are the DNS control. So it's registered here and it's controlled by the name servers. That's a little more difficult to understand, but I do bring that up because sometimes you might have your domain someplace, you're hosting someplace, but then it's saying that your domain control is on a third provider. And that could be because maybe you used to be on the hosting account and now you no longer are. So that's why the domain is still pointing at the old hosting account. It could be for a variety of reasons on why you would have that third intermediate. We try to keep everything simple, but this is a great lead to figure out where your stuff is. Domains. Now, we kind of covered this a little bit, but I wanted to dive into the extensions aspect of it. And I am going to call you guys out a bit. I'm feeling mean today. Who here has a .net or a .biz domain? Okay, we got some good polls here happening. Thank you, Kiki. I think you took care of that for me. Okay. All right, so let's talk about domain names. A .com, from a branding standpoint, it tends to be the most professional, the most trustworthy. You know, people think that if you have a .com that you're a legit business, right? And a .net or a .org, .org is usually for nonprofits, but it doesn't have to be. .net and .biz, in my humblest opinion, are just those who couldn't get a .com. And if that's you, feel free to give yourself a shout out in the chat. If your company that you're looking for isn't available in a .com, I would be wary about proceeding with that name because chances are there might be another company out there that has an exact same name. And then you're going to be fighting for the opportunity to get found, especially if they have a bad reputation. So just be aware that if you're confused with another brand, that could be a hindrance, especially because most people, they're going to guess your name.com. Now, instead of getting a .biz or a .net, there's something else you can do, which I think is a lot of fun, and you can pick a different web extension. You can pick .fashion, .buzz, .ninja, .photography, .lawyer, .photo, .design, which is what ours is. There are so many, hundreds of them. And they're all quite fun. So you could even do something really cool where, let's say your company's name is Brandywine Tech. You could literally get brandywine.tech as your website address. Like, how cool is that? Great branding, and it helps you be more memorable. Now, if you can't get the .com, sometimes people buy domain names. They scour the web, they buy the domain names, and then they sell them for thousands of dollars because they call it a premium domain name. So, and that happened to us actually. We came up with this name, no one else had it, but someone had bought this domain name and they were just sitting on it. And we had to spend about $1,200, I think, to get it. But we thought that was beneficial. But sometimes they're like $10,000. So just weigh the options and think about changing your name if you can't get a .com. And if it's not a competition who has a .com, then perhaps get a little bit creative and do something like .rocks, .finance, etc. So there's lots of web extensions out there. Most of them are for fun. They are more expensive than the regular domains. Just be aware of that. My top 5 domain registrars. Again, a domain registrar is where you go to buy the domain. And Google's my favorite because they have free privacy. But there are a lot of domain registrars. And if you have a domain name and it's not here, don't worry so much about that. So long as you have access to it and it doesn't cost you $1 million a year, you're in good shape. Google domains, I believe, is about $12 a year. And the others might charge you for privacy, which can be another $12. So you could really spend anywhere from $12 to $30 for a domain name per year. I recommend that if you have a serious business, register your domain for at least 5 years. That does increase your SEO rankings on that. So once you buy your domain, you're all set. Now, the cool thing about these search features, so if you're looking for a domain name, I'm going to go ahead and type in one of mine. It will tell you whether or not that domain is taken. And it will give you alternatives. So it says, okay, well, that's taken, but here's some other extensions. And this is where you can really start exploring and getting ideas based on what their generator comes up with. brandswan.company. It's a little long. Also think about, what your email is going to be. .design was a rather large one that we decided to go with, but we took the risk on that. So this is a great way to do it. If you look for your domain at GoDaddy, for example, and again, I'm going to type in brandswan.com. So it says it's available for $1,200, but it's not because I bought it. So I'm not sure what that's about. It might just be an old thing. Let me try something else. Let's do google.com. Okay, so Google's taken. And because they're so big, notice that it's not showing you anything with Google in it. Googling.co, and look how much this is going for. $20,000 or $30,000. So someone bought Googling.co and wants to sell it for that much money. And there are so many businesses out there. It is getting harder and harder to find a new, like a unique web address, right? But if you follow those tips I gave you, you will be in good shape with this. The last thing I want to talk about, again, is a domain controller, and I'll just explain this a little bit more. When you register your domain, you can set the name servers, what we call the DNS. These servers are where your domain record lives. So it lets the internet know where your website is and where to send your email. And it can be, again, at different companies. If not the registrar, it usually is conventionally pointed to the hosting company. So just things to look for. Tips. You can move your domain to a different company. There's a process. You have to unlock it, then you have to get the codes for it, and it can take 5 to 10 business days to transfer. Purchase your own domain and don't leave that to your designer. This way, it's in your name and you have access to it. Sometimes designers can get a little lazy and just put everything in their name on their account just to make the process faster. But then if you want them to transfer it to you, there's more steps involved. And if you're not happy with your designer, now it's awkward, right? So I would purchase your own domain, and you can go to your designer and ask them who they recommend. They'll happily tell you. So after that first segment talking about the basics and domains, what kind of questions do we have?
So it looks like we only have a comment from Carl, who indicated that he has both a .net and a .com / a .com was getting email spam. So we have a hard forward to the .net from the .com and use the the .net emails. So
Oh, okay. Wow. I will say that, if you have a website out there, try not to put your email address anywhere on your website. Use a contact form instead, and this will crack down on the spam that you get. So that would be my recommendation. And yeah, it's rough on that. So it looks like a lot of you guys are not using a .net or a .biz. A couple are, and just keep that in mind. If it depends how long your company's also been established. So if you're 30 years and you've always used a .net, maybe consider a .com and have it forward to the .net that you advertise so people can remember you more. I see we have one more question on what are your thoughts on using WordPress? I'm actually going to cover that under web apps, so stay tuned. You will hear all about that and my thoughts, but I love it. And Barbara says, I'm supposed to be doing all this, right? I'm supposed to be doing this stuff. Okay, I answered it live, done. We have okay, so that's good. Brand protection is something that you could do. So if you are a national company and you really want to get big, you could buy brands1.com, .net, .org. That's what Google has done to protect their brand. It's going to get expensive if you try to do them all, but it's not uncommon to do a .com and .net. I would just let the .net go if you already have the .com. Unless you really don't want anyone else to have that brand, then I would just buy a lot more than just the .net. Cool. Thank you guys for your questions. Anything else? Okay. Cool. I think we're good. So now that we've talked about domains and a little bit about those extensions, let's talk about the website hosting aspect of it. So my top 5 hosting companies: SiteGround for sure, Flywheel, Media Temple, InMotion, DreamHost. All of these are good, and there are more. I don't recommend GoDaddy for hosting, and it saddens me because I've been with them a long time before I realized like their infrastructure just isn't keeping up with all the cool stuff that WordPress sites can do now. It's very resource intensive, and they just weren't providing the same value for what they were trying to charge. And plus, they were very rigid in their processes. So if something wasn't working right, it was kind of like tough, and I didn't care for that. So I went to SiteGround, and I really love it because it's very fast. They're up to date on the newest technology. Their prices, I would say, are slightly on the higher end, but very affordable, especially if website is going to be generating leads for you, right? I would say, depending on how much you use your website, that's where you need to invest your money. Let's talk about the terminology and what all this stuff is. So you go and you try to sign up for hosting, and they give you these options, and you're like, I don't know what options I should get. Well, most websites, especially if you're a startup company, the startup is perfectly fine. You get one website on the server. In this case, you get 10 gigabytes of web space, which is a lot. If you need more than that, you probably need to resize your photos because that will slow down your website for sure. You get plenty of traffic. They don't stop your traffic. You get your free SSL, which I'll go into, your security certificate. They do backups. They give you email, which I don't recommend you take, but that's a different segment. They work really well with WordPress. It caches it so that your website's faster. You can have as many apps as you want on there. And a feel-good thing is that they use renewable energy, which is fun. So that's what this terminology means. And if you actually click here on the presentation, you can compare the host features. But what I love about this is that you can hover over the tooltips, and it'll give you a more elaborate description on what all this stuff is. I don't want to overwhelm you so much on all the developer jargon. Usually with my clients, I sort of translate this into words that make sense to everybody. So just keep that in mind. If you don't know what all this stuff is, that's absolutely okay. Heck, I don't think I even know what all of it is. No, they talk about PHP versions. So this is really important information if you're transferring a really robust site and you want to make sure that they have the plan best for you. If it also depends on whether or not you want a Windows server or a Linux server. Most people use Linux because it's open source, which means that you don't have to pay anyone to use the software, unlike Microsoft that they want to get paid for it. So Windows servers aren't as popular, but they use different types of technology that you can't use on a Linux well due to the proprietary nature of their platforms. But anyway, so for the most part, you can just come here, buy the startup plan. If you have more than one website, you can go to the Grow Big plan. I would say on average, I think for the first year, it's like $80, and then it goes to, I think, 180 every year after that. If you divide that, it's like about $15 a month, but the resources you get are just amazing. So again, this is what I recommend, but there are others. I would just say, if you do want to get your own hosting account, and you're working with a designer, just check with them and make sure that they can support your choice, so that because some of them, they just don't have the resources to do a really cool theme, and then your website's really slow and you can't edit it, it's airing out, and it's just not fun. So I would not cut your hosting resources to save a couple of bucks. I recommend that you buy your domain separately from your hosting company if it's not on my top 5. So for example, SiteGround, you can go there and buy your own website. I got distracted by a question. I want to answer it. Marini Jones says, Bluehost. Some people really like Bluehost. I was not a fan about their resource cap. Once you reach a certain cap, they cut off your website. What that means is they cache it and they don't show the current site. So if you make changes, it won't be seen on the front end. And they don't really tell you that. So we found them difficult to work with when using very simple things, like a backup plugin was too much for them. So it's possible that they've changed. That was maybe about 5 years ago, but a lot of people use them and a lot of people like them. So I wouldn't rule them out. Opinions about Liquid Web Hosting. I don't know anything about them, but if you compare their services with the ones that I mentioned up here, then you're probably good to go. So if you just kind of compare apples to apples. There's also some resources out there where you can say compare hosting companies, and they'll put them side by side so you can kind of see what that looks like. All right, so I just answered some questions, but do we have any more on hosting and picking a good provider? Now, these are solutions for if you want to build your own website and make it really cool. And by really cool, we're going to talk about what your website can do for you. So let's talk about hosting alternatives, which are website builders. A lot of people are surprised that me, a website designer, would recommend these, but I think they're great options for a startup company if you have no budget. There are some downsides to them, which I'll go into, but again, if you only have a couple $100 and your business would profit from more use of your money, and you allocate it someplace else, especially if it's more of a confirmation that you exist and you are who you say you are. Or you just aren't ready to put money into the lead capturing side of your website. Because I never really think a website should just be information. I mean, maybe with the exception of WebMD. So have that call to action. Don't be afraid to ask for the sale or whatever it is you're trying to accomplish. So Squarespace, I'm sure you've all heard of this one. Squarespace, Wix, Shopify is great for e-commerce. Pixpa is great for photographers. There are so many web builders, and if they're not on this list, it does not mean they aren't good. But these are the most popular that I've actually used. And although we don't provide the service at Branch One, we will send clients to do this themselves if that's what they like. There's also a side-by-side comparison here that I've included, so you can take a look at what's important to you. But I would take a look at their templates, the builder, and how easy it is to use, and then go from there. So ease of use has been rated, choice and flexibility of designs, advertisement free, meaning they're not going to say Made by Squarespace at the bottom of your site. You can use your own custom domain name, depth of navigation. So Wix will only let you go just a couple levels deep. So if you have something more comprehensive, this might not be the best platform for you. So these are actually pretty cool ratings, and I would use them as a good starting point to see if it's good for you. And the pricing is really dependent on them. Squarespace, for example, let's see if they will show me pricing. They've redone their website so many times. I don't know where anything is. I might go to the bottom here. But they show you the template so you know like how cool it is. And they've built their website using their own template, I assure you. So for a very simple website, you can pay 12 bucks, but the 18 one's the most popular. And I think it just has more stuff. You can accept donations, you can sell products online, which is really cool. And again, if you're a retail store, first and foremost, it might be best that you pick a more, a solution that's e-commerce first, design second, you know, to make it easy to use. With these, I recommend these are only used for startups because you can't move your site without rebuilding it. And that's because Wix and Squarespace, they have their own proprietary platforms, right? So you can't move their platform to a host like you could a WordPress site, for example. So be wary of that. If you want to grow and make your website more and more awesome and use different theme, you might need to rebuild it someplace else. So if you expect that you're going to have a really comprehensive website and growth, maybe start with a beginner WordPress site, which I'll go into shortly. Any questions on website builders?
Paris had an unrelated question.
Yeah.
I don't know if you caught that one, but she did have a question in the chat.
Sure. I am a fashion designer. Okay. I have a GoDaddy for my domain and Shopify. I want to enhance my overall web concept, increasing sales and functionality. Can we schedule a Zoom after today's session? Thank you. Yes, you can go ahead and schedule a consultation with me. The link is in the presentation and I will add it to the chat when we're finished. But yes, I would love to speak with you. And yeah, we'll let you know like what we can do, what Shopify has as far as marketing goes. I will say that there's a lot of high profile companies who use Shopify and they're paying like $2,000 a month for like their high end stuff. Like I'm not sure if you guys heard of Rothy's, but that they use Shopify. So depending on what your budget is, you can do some really cool stuff. I will talk about integrating systems and a little bit farther down in this presentation because I think it's so important that everything works well together. You know, you have a CRM and you get that lead into your website and then you reply to them and, you know, following up is half the battle. But yeah, we'd love to talk to you about what that workflow looks like. Okay. Let's touch base on the SSL. So an SSL certificate is basically security for online communications. And I want you guys to answer a question for me. Do you have an SSL or padlock on your website address? And I will show you what that looks like. Now, it depends on the browser, but some have a little green icon here. Chrome just has a gray one, but you will see the padlock here. And if you have a padlock, that means you have an SSL installed. So it looks like the majority of you guys have an SSL installed. Way to go. And for those of you who don't have an SSL installed, let me just tell you a little bit of information about it, as well as maybe clear up what an SSL certificate is. So the SSL certificate establishes a secure connection, and browsers do provide it in that little icon, but it's for sending information sort of back and forth. And if you have a secure connection, it does increase your SEO because that just makes you more credible and trustworthy as far as Google's concerned. Now, although having an SSL can help, it doesn't prevent hackers from infecting your website. That's a different type of security. So an SSL is more so, let's say you fill out a form and it has personal information in it. When the user hits send, the website encrypts it and sends it to the server. And then it might send it back to you encrypted as well, so you can see it. So it's more for communication from the user to the server, and not to prevent your site from getting compromised with malware. So again, a different type of security, but still very important. I recommend that you purchase your SSL from your hosting provider, because they usually will install it for you. And if you're lazy like me, you know, that's always a good thing. One less thing you have to do, right? Any questions on an SSL? Again, they can absolutely come free with a hosting account. Usually you can get them from GoDaddy or any other SSL provider for like $70 maybe. It really depends on the kind of information that you're passing through. There's different levels of SSL. If you're in the medical field, for example, you might want something rather higher because of the HIPAA compliance. But yes, if you're selling products, you absolutely have to have an SSL, and that's PCI compliant. So just keep that in mind. Okay.
Looks like we have a question from Barbara.
All right, Barbara, let's see. Our hosting is supposed to keep our SSL up to date, but my website often tells me it's outdated at least 3 times a year. Any ideas how to fix this? Cool. So is it telling you that you have to update your plugins, or is it telling you that your SSL isn't up to date? Would be my question to your question. Sometimes every year it asks you if your information is up to date, and that's sort of like an ICANN thing, which is like the overlord of domain names. I've never heard of the SSL needing an update. Do you know what your website is using as far as the application? Like, is it WordPress? If it's WordPress, it might just be updating the SSL plugin and not the SSL itself. So I think you might be updating the plugin and not the SSL certificate. So I'd be curious about that. I would check and see if it's a plugin you have to update. Thank you for that one. Yes, your website's comprised of so many parts, and we're actually going to get into that right now, guys. We're going to talk about web apps. How am I on time? I'm doing good. Okay. Let's talk about web apps. So no matter where your website lives, it's a digital environment, right? So, and it can do so many awesome things. And like a computer, websites are built using software. So you have 2 different kinds of websites. You have one that's coded by a programmer from scratch, and the browser opens it and it's good to go. Most things that we use today are called a content management system, or a CMS. And these are very popular ones you probably heard of, but WordPress, Joomla, Magento, WordPress.com, not to be confused with WordPress.org, but I'll explain that. And all of these require a certain amount of computer savviness, because you're going to be using your mouse and dragging and dropping, and just sort of navigating the documentation and getting used to the settings in itself, right? It's a learning curve no matter which one you use. And website builders like Wix and Squarespace are also considered CMSs, but they just built their own custom one. WordPress is an open source software, so you don't have to pay them to use it, and you can put it on so many different kinds of setups, and that's why it's so popular. It's also very powerful. It used to start as just a blog, but since then we've built on top of it, and now it's just this amazing thing. And it's really exciting. I think it's exciting. So yeah, so the WordPress.org is for what developers use to build you a custom site. And WordPress.com is sort of like Wix or Squarespace. It's limited and you have to pay for it. But I think they created it for people who aren't web developers but want to kind of get into WordPress. So what can your website do? And I know we're talking about web technology, and you may just be in the beginnings of creating your site and coming up with an outline of what that looks like. But I encourage you to think about what you want your website to do for you. Again, each page should have a call to action, and it should be, the call to action, as well as at the end of the day, what do you want that one person to do? Is it to call you? Do you want them to book an appointment with you? Do you want them to share your stuff on social media? So So build your websites with intention. And here's some cool stuff that your website can do. Event calendars with registrations, photo galleries, video players, booking systems, online booking that will integrate with your internal system, lead capturing forms, contact forms, request a quote forms, search features, appointment schedulers, online quizzes and polls, security and backups, blogging, of course, social media feeds, and tracking the effectiveness of Facebook campaigns, for example. Your website is just this awesome thing that you can use to build your community, to get your leads, and stand out from the competition. So that's what's so cool about this. And all of these applications, some of them are free. And what happens is WordPress became a thing, and third-party developers made these add-ons, and you can buy them. And I will say, if you do decide to buy them, they are worth the money. Typically, you pay a one-time fee every year, and it will automatically keep it updated. There is one downside to using a web app like WordPress, and that is because it's always evolving, you have to constantly update it. And WordPress is comprised of a couple of parts. WordPress is the database and core files. Then you have all your plugins, which is all the fun stuff that makes your site do things. So when WordPress updates, sometimes these break, these plugins, and so the developers have to fix them, and that's why you're constantly updating. So I'm just wondering if that's what you're thinking. I can't recall your name. I'm so sorry. To go back to answered. To the bottom. Barbara. Yes, I think that's what's happening with you. You might have a plugin called really simple SSL, and that just needs to be updated. But there's a lot of different ways to do one thing, and there's lots of the same plugins type out there, and just finding the best one for you and your budget. And always look for at least one that's 4 stars and up. Anything less than that, and it's crap, and it's going to break your site. Free advice. Make sure you use plugins that are highly rated and have lots of reviews. No matter what you do, though, whether it's websites on a web builder or one that you're building yourself with a designer, all websites are expected to have an SSL certificate and be mobile friendly. So if you're on a platform where those things aren't happening, you need to go someplace else. Being mobile friendly is actually another SEO factor. Mobile friendly sites rank higher than ones that are not. And depending on your industry, it might dictate how responsive it needs to be. Any questions on that aspect? On web applications like WordPress? And there are others, again. WordPress is definitely the most popular. If someone has thousands of products, I might recommend Shopify or a different platform, depending on how robust they need it to be and if that's their primary goal is to sell. But Barbara, WooCommerce is a really great platform, so no complaints about what that looks like. Okay. Feel free to ask your questions and I'll get to them. Email. Now, I know I'm throwing email in the loop here because although it's really nothing to do with your web or hosting, it is sort of tied to your brand, right? And your domain name. So here are my top email companies that I recommend. The first one is Google Workspace. And it looks like we've got another poll going, and let's see what you guys use. You guys are savvy. Look at you guys. Gmail's in the lead. It's because it's free. Okay. Wow, I can't believe that G Suite and Microsoft 365 are very neck and neck. Surprising. So there it goes. All right, we have our final winner is Gmail. So my favorite top email companies are Google Workspace, which they just rebranded again, which was called G Suite. And it includes all the Google apps that kind of rival Office Microsoft 365. So it has, its version of Outlook, its version of Calendar and Google Sheets and Excel and all that stuff, Google Slides. So it sort of works the same way. I liked it because everything was in the cloud. And at the time I launched my business, it was definitely the cheaper option. I just felt like it worked a lot nicer. I really like the online aspect of it. And I would say Google has been sort of leading the cloud for a while. Office 365 didn't really get to the cloud until it became Office 365. It was just Microsoft Office, right? So, but these services rival each other and either one is fine. So if you want to use Google, use Google. If you want to use Microsoft Office, use Microsoft Office. I would just pick one and stick with it. Office 365, you're going to want to make sure you're using a Microsoft product so that everything syncs. If you have an iPhone, I don't know if Microsoft products would be the best for you. You might want to go with Google because you kind of, you need a separate app anyway for them. It might work better with your setup, but sometimes it doesn't really matter which one you're using, but that you're just using one. The next one is Gmail. What I like about Gmail is it's free. It is less professional, but it is a bit more professional than a .yahoo or a .hotmail, which I don't even think exists anymore. .aol. If you have an AOL email address, it just makes people feel like you're not with it, even though you might be. So just keep that in mind when you have your email address and you're putting it out there professionally. I recommend a branded email address. Now, here's a cool thing. Google Workspace, aka G Suite, works just as Gmail does, except when you log in, you have a cool branded email address. So for example, you could be jane345@gmail.com, or you can be jane@brandswan.design and still log into Gmail. So you're still using Gmail, you still have the same interface, but it's just nicely branded with your company and it looks really great. And let me see, I might show you. But yes, who here has a branded email address? I'm curious. Yes, but here you can see how it's branded at the top right of my screen. So that's really cool. Okay, we got some branded email addresses, a bit more than no, which I'm happy to see. Perfect, love it. Very fun. Okay, so most of you have a branded email address, and I'm glad to hear it. It's such a small thing, but it completely changes people's perspective of you from a branding standpoint and how they do business with you. And I'd hate to have that trust factor undermine everything we're doing right now with our web technology in order to build trust. So such a small thing can really change, everything. Does anyone have any questions on the email? Now, with email, you can go on any platform. So like I said, you can be on GoDaddy with your domain, you can be on SiteGround with your hosting, and Gmail or G Suite with your email. And it's all controlled by your domain control, which sounded obvious, but with your name servers. So when you go here, you can tell the domain and tell the internet, my website's here and my email's here. So they can be in completely different places, which is cool. So I know this is a lot. So I wanted to share with you my setup and what I prefer to do. And this is coming from someone who was a diehard Microsoft Office person who had Outlook installed and having to download and back up my email because it was over 2 gigabytes and it would crash all the time. So yeah, that was fun. I'm not sure if anyone has experienced having too big of an email file, but that was something. So here is my setup. I use Google Workspace. It's roughly $12 per user. And I also have my domains at Google Domains, and that's roughly $12 a year. That includes privacy. Hosting a SiteGround, and I just checked, they've actually increased their prices a little bit. So that's actually now $180. And I can send you an updated presentation if you'd like, Kiki, with that. My SSL is on SiteGround. And so what that means is I don't really have to buy that separately because it's already included. And I use WordPress for the website. So this is my setup and I'm very happy with it. And as an extra bonus, something I like to do is Google Voice. I used to be a big Skype fan to take my calls, but at some point they decided they weren't going to do custom voicemails anymore. So when someone would call my number, it would have a lovely woman with a British accent say, the person you're looking for is not here right now, and I'm like, wait, this is terrible. So that's when I discovered Google Voice, and they've since kind of revamped it, and I quite like it. So take a look at that. I think it's also about $12 a month per user. And it can forward to your cell phone. There's lots of options there. So I absolutely love doing that. So that's what we do at Brand Swan. And a free tip for you is don't use the email that comes with a hosting account. Get your own provider, because if you're going with Microsoft or Google, that they've been around a while, they're trusted. You don't just not get emails. So definitely think about that. I used to have email at GoDaddy, and they had a lot of spam rules, and sometimes my emails wouldn't even go out, sometimes I wouldn't get them, so I couldn't have that. So that's why I decided to take my email away from GoDaddy and put it someplace else. But that just gives me food for thought. How good is the email with SiteGround? I don't know, I can't vouch for them, but with getting the Microsoft products or the Google products in addition to the email, I think it's worth it. So if you guys want to schedule a call with me, you can. There is a link here. You can have a free consultation via Zoom with me. I'm happy to talk with you about your setup and any direction you want to take it. And if you want, you can join our Facebook group. So it's called Reveal Your Inner Awesome. And the reason we started Brand Swan is because, well, we both had our own businesses, but we really, really wanted to work together because we were friends. And whereas Tiketica, my old business, was made out of necessity, Brand Swan had more of a vision behind it, because we met so many great professionals and companies that just didn't know how awesome they are. And, we're constantly worried about imposter syndrome and whether or not we're good enough to do this, whether we have the talent and the will, and it kind of breaks my heart. So we built this community just to uplift each other and to share what we know. So this Friday, I'm actually going to be doing a boundary setting talk with Julianne Cross. She's amazing. And if you want, you can stop in. Just gonna be a Facebook Live. Oh, it'll be on Zoom as well. But Reveal Your Inner Awesome Facebook group. You can join it if you'd like. There's lots of great resources there. And we have speakers at least every Friday, if not more, on a variety of topics. So from a lot of diverse individuals, which is amazing. I've also included references in here to some of the materials. So the Whois database, more information about domains, SSLs, how they work, hosting terminology, and of course, Brand Swan consulting with me and the Facebook group. So that is it. I would love to take any questions at this time since I've run through this. We do have a few minutes, about 12 minutes. So I say abuse and use me. What do you guys want to know?
Thank you, Jane. That was such a great presentation, and you provided so much information.
I know, I feel bad about it, but I also feel bad not including it. So
No, don't feel bad about it. So just to let everybody know that the PowerPoint, the links that Jane shared with you in regards to how to schedule an appointment with her, and a recording link to this webinar will be sent to you 3 to 5 business days after this particular presentation. And then as you guys go ahead and post your information in the chat, like any questions that you have, I'm sorry, please post them in the Q&A. I am going to post a 1-minute survey that we would like you all to take, just to let you know how much you enjoyed the webinar, and just provide us with any feedback that you may have so that we can continue to offer these webinars to you at no cost. So yeah, please feel free, get those questions in the Q&A. So Jane, She can answer any questions that you have. Take advantage of this moment. And I'll go ahead and get that link in the chat for you.
All right, cool. Thank you. You're welcome, Lisa. We'll just give another minute for questions. You're welcome, Carolyn. Okay, we got some questions in. Barbara, this was good. Thank you. What is your advice for revamping a current website? Should you do it all before publishing or make changes bit by bit? That's a good question. I like to say that your website is a journey, not really destination. So once you get the new framework in, I would publish it as soon as possible because it's already an improvement over what you have currently, right? That's sort of the goal of it. So I would definitely publish it, and I would keep adding on to it until it's perfect. So I would publish it sooner than later, as long as the pages are attractive and the messaging is there, because you'll never be done. You know, you're always going to add this cool thing or that cool thing, but if you wait until you're done, you'll never be done and you'll never publish it. So I say launch it. Be crazy. Sean asks, can you make recommendations around SEO and effective marketing? Yes, SEO is one of my favorite topics. It's changed quite a bit since the 90s. And it also depends on your industry, if I can be frank about that. Because if you are a realtor, for example, you have a lot of competition, right? You have not only the agents in your office, but you have other offices. And then you have other franchises. And then, so you have a lot of competition, and the chances of you getting on the first, second, third, fourth, even fifth page could be really hard and could cost you thousands of dollars. So at that point, you might need to consider Google AdWords, but you're going to be bidding against those companies as well. So you might want to think about social media as your primary source of advertising or marketing. I love SEO. That's how we get lots of our leads. But there is a formula to it. So if you want to do it, do the basics and do it organically, I think you should start there, because sometimes you're surprised at how you rank up. Now, if you rank up really quickly and you're like, that was too easy, are you optimizing for the keywords that people are actually typing in? So think about that as well. But SEO is a great way to market, a great way to come up with leads. And I would use it in conjunction with your systems so that your leads come into a system and you can follow up with them and just make your website work for you. Did that answer your question?
Looks like we have still another 7 minutes. We still have quite a few participants with us today. Please feel free to post any questions in the chat, any last minute comments or anything. Again, please make sure you fill that survey link out, and then 3 to 5 business days after this webinar, we will get you a copy of the PowerPoint recording links, as well as the link to schedule a consulting appointment with Jane. So we still have 7 minutes. Take advantage of this time. Get your questions in the Q&A.
All right. All right, we have an answer from Sean. Thank you. Any commentary about integrating marketing with other platforms would be helpful. LinkedIn. Oh, we got lots of questions now.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So, yes. I think it depends on your industry, again, where you should market. But we've worked with clients who need LinkedIn, who need Instagram, who need Facebook, and you'd be surprised by the results. And you would assume that maybe Facebook might be good, but really we're getting better results on LinkedIn. I would say the biggest, most important way to integrate your marketing with any platform is storytelling. People want to know who you are. They want to know what you care about. And if you show that, they will come. So regardless of what platform you're on, I would just do the story driven aspect to the marketing. Could you share some of your completed work, such as what you have on your design collection page? Sure, of course I can. I'll do that in just 1 second. SEO retail, what's your recommendation? Okay. I think it also depends what you're selling. If it's clothes, obviously people may want to come in. So when you're doing the SEO, you're also competing with Amazon with their Amazon Prime. So know your competitors. And if you're selling a unique product, obviously that will help you with the SEO too. But if you're just selling, shoes and other people are selling shoes, SEO might not be the best place for you. Again, it might be social media and building that company culture where people want to buy from you because they think you're cool. You're their kind of person. So building that brand and doing the social media campaign is sometimes just more effective than just being a list and an SEO page. So yeah, your industry is important and what you're selling makes a difference. Real fast, be happy to share. I've been doing this for a while. It was just me for a long time. And then we built a team, and now it's looking at this. It's not just my work anymore. It's a teamwork, and it feels really good. So we've done a lot of stuff in a lot of different industries. We love the variety in which we get to work for. We really specialize in branding. So we might get someone who needs a logo, a website, business cards, letterhead. Delaware Day Camp was a fun project because they put their logo on t-shirts, and then we built a really easy website for them. So if you wanted to take a look, just go to brandswan.design, and going to the design collection page, you can see all the cool stuff we've done. But we've got logos here. And again, our mission is just make you stand out from the competition. And I'm slightly competitive, so I'd like to make you look better. So that's always like an inner challenge with us, but yeah, so we love working with the different varieties. It's a lot of fun, especially when we get to name the company and come up with the slogan and the brand, like we did with VacuPro. That was fun. Doing the name research and making sure it wasn't taken and all that fun stuff. Okay, let's see. Okay, so we have another question. Judy, you have a long name. I'm going to go ahead and dissect it here. I'm going to put it in. Seasons of Life Yoga and Reiki.com is the most obvious. Now, it is available, but it's long, right? So we have to think about the length of that. So what I might do is take off Enrique and then see what that looks like. That's available. There's a great quote. If you give me 1 second, I can bring it up. But it's about perfection. So if there's any perfectionists in the room, you might want to stay for it. Here we go. Perfection is achieved not when perfection is achieved not when there is nothing more to add, but when there's nothing left to take away. And with our attention spans, the less words, the easier they can identify what the words say, and shorter your email address is. So I would just keep whittling away at this and see what you can get away with. I doubt this is available, but let's check. It's taken. So now you can start adding in differentiators. So that's what I would recommend. Seasonsoflifeyoga.com. And what if it's a .yoga? Oh my God, it's available. So now you can do seasonsoflife.yoga, and that's available. That's fun. I would get the .com and the .yoga. Okay. We have 1 more minute. I think that's it. Yeah, there you go. You found the quote. Thank you very much. But yeah, keep your brand simple and memorable, and it will be. Guys, you've been awesome. You've asked so many great questions, and I'm really glad I was here today. So thank you so much. You've been good. This was fun.
Thank you, Jane. I don't know if you guys can give her a virtual round of applause, but
Thank
she is
you.
definitely and
Thank
deserving
you.
of one.
Thank you, Kiki. I
You're
appreciate it.
welcome. Thank you
You're
so
all
much.
welcome. Okay, have a great day, guys.
You
Bye.
too. Bye-bye. For any last minute viewers, if you guys are interested in starting up service with Temple SBDC, just to let you all know that we do offer no cost consulting as well. Well, not as well, but we do offer no cost consulting. So if you needed further assistance with getting some help with getting your business up and running, please send an email to sbdc@temple.edu. I will post that email in the chat. Also, again, as I've stated, this presentation will be sent to you 3 to 5 business days after today. So just give us a little time. I know sometimes, you want to go ahead. Oh, great. She posted the appointment link in there as well. So if you guys want to schedule that appointment, Paris, if you're still on, if you want to schedule that appointment with Jane, she just posted that link in the chat. So make sure you grab that. It will be provided to you in that PowerPoint that we discussed. And yeah, so we thank you all for attending. All the praises are coming through the Q&A for you, Jane. Thank you,
Oh, thank
thank
you.
you. And we look forward to doing future webinars with you in the future, Jane.
That'd be wonderful. Okay, bye, guys.
Bye, everyone. Have a great afternoon.
Make good decisions.